3 suited, I assume, from the button. Again, when Celtic defends the big blind and checks to us, no matter what the flop, I'm going to be betting 40% of the pot or so. And here's one of the first times he actually defends against that bet. So that I'm assuming he's not folding ever in the hand. So I'm going to give up on my bluff. And of course it wouldn't have worked. I think he has to bet the turn there. The board is getting very straight dry, and he wants to protect against his 2-pair. And when he doesn't bet the turn, he at least has to bet the river and get some value out of me. He can't just, put me on that 10 and have that straight every single time. You have to, at some point, get chips from the chip leader, and betting the river would be be a perfect spot to do so. It wouldn't have worked in this case, but you at least have to try. Alright, we're probably going to be raising this hand. Hopefully we get some action. We do. Just as if we had, 4 high here, we're going to also bet, we would bet our 4 high, we're also going to bet our kings. And this is a good situation when channel calls. So what do we put him on? He could have a 10, he could have a jack, he could have a straight draw, he could have a flush draw. None of those hands are helped on the turn, so we're going to continue betting, especially when he checks to us. And what do we do in the river? Well, he doesn't necessarily have to have the 10. He will definitely pay us off with the 10. Actually, he'll probably raise with the 10. He'll pay us off with the jack, and he'll fold all his missed draws. I think I like betting a bit on the smaller side, just in case he does come over the top, and then we can safely fold, or at least evaluate. Yep, so standard bet size, 40% of the pot, and he does fold. So he was chasing some kind of draw, and he just didn't get there. I think we got maximum value out of that hand. Alright, so sometimes in this situation, when there's a limp from the small blind and I'm in the big blind, I would raise. I wouldn't be surprised if I do it here, but I also wouldn't be surprised if I just, take the free card and play a pot in position. So we took our stab, and I think we're done with it, unless we hit a 9 or a 10. And no, neither of those would have been good. Just like when Celtic 78 had the Jack 8 and turn 2 pair, I think Windchannel did a very poor job of extracting value from his hand. It wouldn't have worked, but he should have at least attempted to get more chips in the pot versus me. Like I said, one of these guys has to make a big push or take a big gamble or play a big pot to come even close to me. They have to, Eradicator has to double up twice to even just pull even. And they're not doing a good job of building up big pots when they have hands. And they're also giving up too easily when they don't have big hands. So they're making it really easy for me at this point. I'm just going to continue on my game plan and not get involved in too many big pots when I don't have too much. So we'll open the King 4 again. Like I said, we're opening up a lot of hands here. We're just putting we're putting a lot of pressure on our opponents with the minimal bet sizing. And when we bet the minimum and we get re-raised here, we can safely fold when we have nothing. That's a non-standard re-raise size, 3.5x. I guess when he's out of position, that's not so bad. He could make it a bit lower. I think 3,000 would be the maximum I'd make it, but you can even go lower than that. Yeah, I think out of position that's not a bad bet size, but you could still go a bit lower. Alright, we'll raise the old offsuit connector. Again, we got Celtic to call, which is fine, because anytime he calls out of the blinds, we are in position, and whether we have a hand or not, we're going to bet the flop. So he checks, we bet the flop, and he calls. Now, this is one of the few times in this tournament you'll notice that I've double barreled. Why did I do it here? I think it's very unlikely that Celtic has a king. I think I'd like to think that he would have, either led or check raised us. So I'm taking a king out of his range. He may have a 7, he may have something like a7, and he may have a flush draw. Straight draw is unlikely. Well, he could have picked up a straight draw on the turn, but he certainly didn't have one on the flop. So if we can take a king out of his range, and we think he's the kind of player who will try to get down to showdown cheaply, but be able to fold if his hand doesn't improve. So I'm going to take a second shot here, and he calls. And here's a good hand. Here's a good card to represent on the river. If we figured that he doesn't have the king beat, and he's just trying to play the pot softly and keep things small, then the ace is definitely going to be a scare card for him. So when he checks the river, we can take a small bet. We're folding to any shove, and you can see that I sized my bet a bit smaller than usual. Normally I would have made it 3,700 here. I'm making it 3,000 for a couple reasons. One, if he does shove on us, we're saving 700 chips when we have to fold, and we're also making our sizing so that if he does want to make a play at us, he has a lot of fold equity left. We're giving him the illusion of fold equity. And if he does go over the top of us, we're making it look like he has room to do so. If we made it any bigger, then we would probably just be pot committed to call. But we're trying to make it look like he has room to shove over us. And by doing so, we're making it, hopefully, look like we want him to shove over us, implying that we have a very strong hand and we are going to call. So this is a rare 3-barrel bluff on my part. I don't usually like to do this, especially against players I've identified as sticky. But I thought this was, a good spot to, put the hammer down, use my massive stack, and try to put pressure on these guys. Nobody wants to go out next, or third, or even second, and they're all under pressure to do so equally. So keep the pressure on. Try to pick up some pots that I didn't otherwise deserve because of my cards. We're definitely going to raise the ace-jack. Make it close to 3x out of position against Eradicator. He calls. And, as I said before, we're going to bet pretty much any flop, so why not just keep betting when we actually have top pair? There's an argument to be made for checking here, but I think against Eradicator, he'll be able to see through that. He'll know that I'm betting every flop, and then when all of a sudden I check, he will probably figure out that I'm trapping. So just keep the pedal to the metal and hope he comes along with an ace with a weaker kicker, and we can get his whole stack. I think I would have liked to bet here. I'm not sure why I checked. I guess because I had dastardly designs. So yeah, I think that's a fairly good flop to make this move on. As I said the previous hand, when I've been betting and betting and betting, and all of a sudden I check and then go on to check raise, that shows a lot of strength on my part, and I think Eradicator will fold a lot of his overcard hands, and if he has an ace, he has a gut shot draw. So I think this represents a lot of strength, and I guess that's why I decided to do it. It just didn't happen to work here as Eradicator shoves all his chips in my eyeballs. Alright, we get a limb from Celtic on the button. We've identified him as a very passive, non-aggressive player. He likes to see a lot of flops, but he doesn't like to raise. Pocket nines is a perfectly good hand to not isolate because there's no one else, but it's a perfectly good hand to raise here and try to win the pot pre-flop. He does call. We take our standard dab at it, and he calls. With his stack size, because he doesn't shove here, I'm 100% certain he doesn't have the 10. And if the board doesn't get too scary, I think I'm going to get all his chips in on the turn. Unless an ace or a king comes off, or maybe even a spade. But we'll see what happens there. I'm pretty sure all the money's going in on the turn here, and that's a pretty safe card. There's no more overcards to my 9s. I pick up a gut shot just in case he's been slowing playing a 10. I'm actually surprised I didn't try to get it all in here, but I guess, you know, I miscalculated. He does have about 125% more than the size of the pot, so it's kind of a tricky situation. A shove is justified here. I don't want to see any other high cards roll off that might scare him off. So I think I want to get all the money in here, and actually an overshove like this would look a bit weaker. So I think shoving here is the better play, but making this size bet is not the worst. He does leave him with exactly half pot, so I think I'm getting action no matter what I bet here. Not that there's any other bet but 5,700 to put them all in. And the 6 is a very safe card, so we bet enough to put them all in, and he calls, and he shows us the old pocket 3s. So I think it was him who played the pocket 3s versus January Man. January Man's pocket 7s. Yeah, that was definitely Celtic. And it's the same situation. If you have a pair on the button, don't try to limp in with it, especially if you are only 22 big blinds deep. Take a, put in a little raise. If I come over, if I 3-bet him, then you can evaluate whether or not you want to go with it, and 4-bet shove. But playing pocket 3s like this, hoping that I'm, 3-barrel bluffing again. He didn't know I was 3-barrel bluffing in that last hand, but he's basically hoping I'm 3-barrel bluffing. Actually, 4-barrel bluffing if you include the pre-flop action. He's hoping that he's ahead on the pre-flop, on the flop, on the turn, and on the river. And pocket 3s versus this board, when there's all these overcards and there's some straight draws, and I could have a whole bunch of pairs in my hand. That's just it's a hopeless play. If he had got it all in pre-flop with me, I think I wouldn't have mind that. He has to kind of gamble, and maybe he's hoping I have ace king or ace queen, and he can double up and win a coin flip. But playing his pocket 3s like this, he basically had no chance to ever win the pot, except the small hope that I was bluffing him. Turns out I wasn't, and we're down to 3. And as you can see, I have 166 big blinds, and my opponents have 73 big blinds total. So I have more than double their combined stacks. So this is a very good situation. It'll be a complete train wreck if I don't go on to win the tournament this time. All I have to do is play patient, don't gamble too much, keep chipping away slowly but surely, and put a lot of pressure on my opponents, with small bets and small raises. So that's my game plan going forward. If Winch Handle hadn't bet here, I would have taken a small stab. I would have bet, somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,200, 1,250 maybe. So by bombing out for, over the size of the pot, Winch Handle is losing an extra $1,200 chips in value. He could have check raised all in and gotten that 1,200 chips and applied the same amount of pressure, but he decided to bomb away before I had a chance to even bluff. Here's pretty standard, a limp on the button. We're going to isolate from the small blind with pretty decent hand. He does call. We bet out, and he folds. That's too bad. That would have been a good situation. I hate limping at the best times, but in a 3-handed game, limping is just it's an unforgivable sin, especially limping on the button. You want to pick up the small pots. You want to keep applying pressure to your opponents. You don't want to limp in and hope and pray that you hit the flop correctly. Give yourself that second chance of winning the pot by being the aggressor and giving yourself permission to c-bet on the flops. As you can see, that's what I've been doing a lot, and these guys are basically just waiting around for a perfect situation to get their chips in. And that's a recipe for disaster for them, and a recipe for tasty dessert for me. Alright, so here I decided to keep the pot small at a position versus Eradicator. He's been calling a lot of my pre-flop raises, so I wanted to take a lower variance route and try to outplay him post-flop, although that's kind of tough to do from out of position. We check the flop when we hit middle pair, and he bets, and he would probably be doing that with, every hand in his range. Doesn't necessarily have to have the king here. So we'll call. Interesting check by him on the turn. I remember in game thinking, well, yep, he definitely doesn't have that king. So there's very few river cards that will be dangerous for us, and this is one that's actually particularly good for us, so we're definitely going to bet here. I don't think we have to go oversized. I don't think we have to try to milk a lot of value out of him because he hasn't shown a lot of strength here, so we'll just bet half the pot, and he folds. Alright, here's a rare raise from Eradicator on the button. I'm glad he did it. As we saw with Wind Channel earlier, who was limping the button, that's a losing play. Eradicated raising is, at least he's trying to get in there and buy some pots. But we're going to defend it's just a little bit over a min raise, about 2.5x. We're definitely going to defend with suited Broadway cards. Here's where we can decide whether to raise or call. It's a very connected board, so we can represent, Jack 10. We can represent Jack 9. We would do that with 2 spades, and we certainly do it with second pair. But I think I like calling better. Eradicator is putting 10% of his stack in with this bet, so I don't think he's folding a lot here. So I think I like calling and trying to evaluate on the turn. It's a fun little turn. It's a tricky spot because there are a lot of straight draws now. This board is crazy with straight draws, so I think I'm going to go into check call mode and give him an opportunity to bluff off a bit more chips, and not try to blow off worse hands. I think in this case I want to keep the pot as small as possible and give him a chance to bluff, especially when I'm out of position. And now the flush draw got in there, but he didn't bet the turn, so I don't think there's a lot of flush draws in his range. I am worried about it. I am wary of it. I think I just decided to go into check call mode, and like I said, let him, if he's bluffing, let him take one more stab at it. Oh, and he makes a big bet here. I think I call this in game. I called this fairly quickly, and my instinct now is to say, I'm not folding. I'm not folding 2 pair to an aggressive player, even though the board is kind of scary. So I call. And he had pocket 7s. I remember him saying afterwards, nice hand, and then he said, well, I had to take a shot at it. And I didn't say so at the time, but I certainly disagree. You don't always have to take a shot at it. He probably should have recognized that I was in check call mode. It definitely had something strong enough to call with, but maybe not strong enough to bet myself. So I don't like that river bluff. At this point in the tournament, when I have all the chips, it's going to be really hard to bluff me because you're not really putting much pressure on me. Neither of these guys can pressure me into busting. They can't bust me. They have to, double through me several times before they can start pressuring me to the point where, well, any mistake and I bust. I'm not busting anytime soon. I have 175 big blinds. So I think this bluff on the river, which is designed to pressure me into folding, is not going to work as often as Eradicator thought it would. I think I would have liked him to just, check behind on the river, give up on his bluff, and save those last 3,500 chips. Because now he's under, I have him 10 to 1 now, or even more, maybe 11 to 1 now, and he's made it a lot more difficult on himself to come back and win the tournament. Yeah, I like this move by him no matter what he has. He's doing this just before, he gets below that he's at 16 big blinds now, and as you can see, when I'm in raise and he shoves, I have to win if I call, I have to win 42% of the time in order for it to be a profitable call, and that's just on the threshold of my calling range. Any lower than that, I'm pretty much committed to call with any two. So Eradicator is, he doesn't want to get himself any lower than 16 big blinds, and so this is a perfect time to 3-bet shove with his stack after I raise the button. I don't think we're going to play the Jack 4. Here's a rare pot where these two play against each other. That's interesting. I'm curious as what win channel is bet folding here. I guess he's, ace 10 or queen 10, but I think he would have called queen 10. I hope he would have called queen 10. He's got to gamble at some point to double up and have a stack, that's worthy of taking me on. Maybe he just has, weak jack 10, jack 9, something like that. Yeah, that's a curious bet. That's a curious bet fold in this situation. Again, they play a pot. Okay, I like the flop check by Eradicator, keeping it small, and I think, did he bet the turn? He did bet the turn, didn't he? Yeah, I'm not sure why Eradicator didn't bet the turn. There's, all these straight draws, and there's now 2 flush draws, so I think he has to bet the turn there. I know the instinct is to slow play when you have chip aces, but on boards such as this, and your stack is as low as it is, I think you have to at least get some value out of an opponent who's drawing. And you definitely have to bet the river. He went for the oversized bet. He just Win Channel was unlucky that he actually got there. I think on the Eradicator should have bet the flop or the turn. More likely the turn, and the river kind of was pretty standard and played out as it should have.